Welcome everyone to our tonight's or today's event, depending on which time zone you are located in. So we are happy to greet Nick today on our event that is called Unlock the Power of Generative AI for Strategy. My name is Yulia, and I'm the leader of the organizational team for International Association for Strategy Professionals in Kazakhstan, and I have my teammates with me. So before we actually start with this very interesting topic to understand how Gen AI can influence our strategy management today, let me share a little bit about our community, what we do here in Kazakhstan, or should I say the Central Asia. The International Association of Strategy Professionals was founded quite plenty of years ago. And actually, this is a community organized by strategy professionals for strategy professionals. And looking at the list of the guests tonight or today, I can see that many of you are actually working within the field of strategy management. So we are very happy that the community keeps growing internationally. Like, for example, we have an international event today, thanking to cooperation between Kazakhstan and Australia. So overall, IASP, how I will call it afterwards, is actually quite a widespread community. It was initiated in the US, including some specialists from Canada, from all over the world. And today, IASP has plenty of chapters across the globe. For instance, those are, of course, US, UK, Germany, Australia, Canada, China, Arabian countries, and many others. So starting from the last year, 2024, the initiative group in Kazakhstan started developing chapter here in the Central Asia, and we are very happy to be the first chapter in the Central Asia to start the development of strategy professionals profession. We do have the mission and vision, but of course, I will not bother you with these details maybe today because we don't have a lot of time. Definitely, we will be sharing the presentation after the meeting, and those who are actually Russian-speaking people on the call or registered for the event will get the information about our community. However, I would like to introduce you to the membership opportunities within International Association of the Strategy Professionals. So, could I please ask you how many people do we have on the call who actually is a part of some professional community? Any? Please raise your hands or maybe put a plus in the chat. I can see Astel. Nice. Carly, gosh, amazing. This is great. Yeah. So definitely, professional communities are something that can really help any professional to grow in the career, to develop, to learn all the new trends, like, for example, we are trying to do tonight. So there is the opportunity to get your annual membership fee in the community. That's $300 per year. But for Kazakhstan, we have economic parity pricing, thanks to our local team negotiations with the global team. And you can see that the membership for Kazakhstan is 150 plus. It has been like that maybe for half of a year. So if you decide to join, please contact us when you have your time. We will definitely explain you what are the opportunities within the membership, but typically those are standard of IASP, how to manage the strategy, many other opportunities to be published and to read the magazine, for example, the strategy magazine, templates, events with discounts, many other amazing opportunities. And the thing that I like about IASP is that a company might buy membership for the employees, because not each professional association gives this opportunity for companies, for corporate players to pay for the employees. So this is amazing. If you are a fan of certifications, please consider the two that you can see on the screen. Those are the certifications that IASP offers for strategy professionals. The first one is for those with experience, and actually I think Nick is the first person with SMP certification that I know personally in my life, so very happy to greet you. We also have the certification for people who are just starting their way in the career of strategy management, and this is SPP. So you can take your time to learn more when you have time later. So we are very happy to greet you, dear colleagues, tonight. This event is going to be in English, which is quite different from what we usually have for Kazakhstani community exclusively. But now we are so happy to greet international community as well, and we are very proud that today we are doing this event. So for those who are located in the Central Asia or anywhere, we do have a couple of opportunities to join the community. Well, we are always welcoming all our people who think alike, who just want to take part in the events. But you might also think of becoming a volunteer with us. Because we do have the entire big team of volunteers who helps to organize events like today's one, not only like this one, but a lot of other different things. For example, currently we are considering localizing the IASP strategy management standard into the languages we do speak in Central Asia. You can have a short look at our organizational committee. This is me, my name is Yulia. And we do also have a couple of other people from our team on the call tonight who are doing, each of them are actually doing their job. Ernar, we have Arman, we have also Karlagash, yeah, and I think this is it from the organizational committee for tonight. Yeah, some people were not able to join, and this is why we are doing the recording. So we will be sharing the recording later. So this is our small team of enthusiasts here located in Kazakhstan, but trying to spread our reach internationally. So you can see some funny pictures over here because within the year we already had several events. We basically do them every month. All the events are organized by volunteers like ourselves, and each of us has their own, of course, job. So if you are looking for some business networking, if you are looking for some professional exchange among the people of the same mindset as you have, and if you are looking for developing within the strategy management profession, consider visiting our events. And you can scan any QR code you can see on the slide, because this is exactly where we are posting the announcements of our events. And I think this is how you actually learned about tonight's one. So with this, I would like to give the floor to our invited speaker for tonight, and we are so happy to greet Nick Hadjinicolaou. So Nick is actually a very seasoned professional within the strategy management, and as I have already mentioned, I think Nick is the first person who I know with SMP certification. But apart from that, Nick has a very lasting experience in strategy management consulting, project management, and change management consulting, and has a lot of very famous, I would say, abbreviations near his surname. So I think, Nick, you will share more about yourself. So about the logistics, dear colleagues, if you have any questions apart from those that you have asked us in a registration form, please feel free to post them to the chat. And at the end of this event, I will definitely read them aloud for our invited speaker. So Nick, the floor is yours. Happy to greet.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Yelena, and really welcome to the strategy community. And I met Yelena just at a chapter's leaders meeting, and we started talking and we followed up. And I said, look, I've been involved now with the IASP for a number of years. Our chapter in Australia formed just after when the pandemic was on. So I welcome you all. So I'm going to talk a little bit about generative AI tonight, and certainly just a little bit of my background. I've been involved with strategy for some time. I've been a trainer and been a management consultant, project manager. I worked at a university teaching international students, and did that for 9 years. And I did my PhD in strategy and strategic project management. I certainly enjoy teaching, and I enjoy learning, and I think it's a very important thing to do both. Education, any education, but also doing industry certification just keeps you up to date, keeps you across some of the things that are going on in industry. So tonight I'm going to talk a bit about some background, just to get everybody on the same page about when we say generative AI and AI and what do we mean. I'm going to talk about the research we've been doing for a number of years now, and then talk about some future trends. And we've got some time for questions at the end. I'll take the questions at the end because I've got a few slides to get through. And the world has changed, just like this picture of this nice cat that you see. That was generated by Google Gemini. I thought I would do that. So let's just go back a few years now. When I say few years, 2 years. Let's just go back 2 years, when at the end of 2022, this thing came along called ChatGPT, and it just hit the world by storm. And it was on the news. It was on American news, US news, Australian news, and the reason why, because it was something that had got 1 million users just after 5 days. So this was a fascinating thing, and so it was, it come out, and it was all about something that was going to replace Google, as the way that it was pitched. Okay, and at the time we saw Microsoft invest $10 billion, and when that hit the news that Microsoft were investing $10 billion, people thought, my God, $10 billion, that's an enormous amount of money. But if you look a little bit deeper, you see that Microsoft, and to put it into perspective, that Microsoft would be making in that 24, in this order of, $88 billion. So $10 billion to them is 10% of their profit for a year. Okay. And I kind of put this example up here as I went to perplexity.ai, and that's one of my favorites because I like the way that it gives you where it got the information from. And, within a couple of minutes, it was able to do some of this, research. I asked it for profit for, and sales for Microsoft, Google, Apple, and OpenAI for 2023, 2024. And quite quickly, it came back with these numbers. So from a strategy perspective, and looking at the way in which we gather data when we're doing strategy and we're doing some analysis, it can very quickly help us. Okay. Some of the background in generative AI is really this. It has been around for a long time. Before ChatGPT 3, there was ChatGPT 2, ChatGPT 1, and what has happened is the power of the computers, the volume of storage in the cloud, has made it possible, and the response times were able to come back in seconds rather than 30 minutes. Like it previously, you'd ask the questions and it would come back in 30 minutes, and so that was just not workable. So ChatGPT 4 was trained on 500 billion words in 2023, and the reason why I want to just explain that is that there were 25,000 computers that were running for 3 months, over 3 months, 3.5 months, non-stop, and they required a lot of energy and power, and they required a lot of water to keep the computers clean. So when you see a lot of announcements of billions of dollars that are being spent at the moment in the US to set up what we call data centers, the computer centers to house it, the reason is that they need this power, and they need the space. Okay, so they need space. So when we talk about the data that's been collected, it was collected from everywhere. It was collected from Google, Wikipedia, Reddit, all sorts of sites. People that wrote books, self-written books that when some were true, some were not true. But when ChatGPT collected that data, it didn't know whether the book was true or whether It was just a story. And so we saw a lot of information coming back that it was not correct. Okay. And then we certainly saw in 2025 there was a lot of improvements in the quality of the data and in the features. Okay. And I'll talk more about those in the coming slides. So I've got a few slides. I'll zip through a couple of these because they're kind of for information, but I just want to highlight that, you know, the pandemic had a big impact on ChatGPT. And the reason that I say that is because during the pandemic, everybody had to move to the cloud. Everybody had to use computers and work from home. And that brought enormous amount of opportunity for these computer companies like Microsoft and Google and, you know, to make a lot of money. So they were able to reinvest that money. The cost of disk space, you know, everything went to the cloud. There was explosion. So that meant that, you know, we could work from anywhere at any time. And certainly, you know, using Microsoft Teams and you know, events like tonight wouldn't have been possible probably before the pandemic because people didn't have the technology at home. Okay, so in 2022, generative AI became what we would call a household word. It was available for general use, and just like now, if you said the word Zoom, people know what Zoom is, but before the pandemic, probably only if you worked in a university that you would know, you know, what Zoom was. And now it's a household word. So we're seeing lots of money being poured in. This picture here just shows you just in terms of where all the different areas of artificial intelligence. So there's explosion in every area. Okay, so it's not just AI. There's explosion in machine learning, explosion in deep learning, and certainly deep learning that sits in the middle. It's a subset of machine learning and that subset of artificial intelligence. So when we talk about ChatGPT, GPT stands for this generative pre-trained transformer, and chatbot, or sometimes you hear the words bot. You know, just use the bot for that. It stands for a chat robot. So what we're seeing is explosion. We're seeing explosion in the companies that make large language models. So we've got ChatGPT, we've got Google Gemini, we've got Microsoft Copilot. You know, we've got, you know, if you like Elon Musk, there's a thing called Grok. Lots of these products, but you know, and they're getting faster, they're getting better, they're getting the information coming back is getting better. It's multimodal. So there are those companies, but then every single other company that has got a computer product is building AI into their product. Okay, so if you're using some sort of nowadays, you know, if you go on to any products to build a PowerPoint presentation, it automatically uses AI and it builds, you know, the content. You know, before we used to search for a nice design, a template for a PowerPoint. Nowadays, we tell it what the presentation's about, and it creates the first version of the presentation. Okay, so what we're seeing is companies that are it is going and being built everywhere. There are a lot of I've got a couple of sites here, just reference sites, this po.com. You can have a look at this after the presentation. It's what we call an aggregator. It has a list of all the generative AI engines, and you'll see there's not just the bots, but there are many other startups and many other applications that we see that are growing, you know, by the hour, not by the day. And certainly there are startups. There are a lot of startups in Australia. We do have an example of a startup called Expertise. They're trusted and they're involved with the Australian chapter for the IASP, and certainly they're a trusted partner. If you're interested in building a bot very easily, they have automated the creation of bot, and they've got a free service. So if you're interested, you can certainly have a look at that website, have a look at the bot. Certainly feel free to contact Denise. He's the chief AI officer and CEO. If you mention IASP Australia, he'll definitely look after you. We have sites like there's a AI for that. That's another site that you can just go to and you say, okay, and it's got a list of all of the AIs. Then we've got sites that compare all of the different bots. So we've got, a constant benchmarking of each of the new releases, and each of the releases, they're compared for intelligence. Okay, they're compared for speed, they're compared for pricing. Okay, so they're, soon, if you go to this site, we'll start to see, we should be seeing at the end of this month, I hear, ChatGPT version 5 that is on its way out. Okay, so again, this is just for information for you. I just thought I'd include it in the pack. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right. We often see too, the other thing that we see is the what we call AI hype, and the AI hype, life cycle, and measures of AI maturity. And this was a post that I saw that I had to include, that I had to laugh, because it highlights that data is one of the most critical things in an organization. So to implement AI, you certainly need good data, clean data, and it says bought Copilot, bought Microsoft Copilot, and forgot it existed. So I've just included that. Okay, so getting on now to the research that we've been doing. We set up a research team back in 2023, and we involved people from IASP Global. There were people from our chapter in Australia, the Army Strategy Association in the US, LBL Strategies. They're a company in the US as well. They do a lot of strategy training, strategy consulting, and we started talking about, well, what are our objectives and what could we do? And our vision was to create a presentation for the global conference, the IASP Global Conference, and to produce some publications. Okay, and these were the people that were on the team. And so we kicked off by looking at and conducting some literature review. Back in 2023, we created a pilot survey with consultation of subject matter experts, strategy experts. And so we went through about 6 or 7 rounds of the pilot questionnaire and pilot survey. We presented in 2024 in Calgary, and that was at the IASP Global Conference. Okay, so that were we presented the 2023 findings. Today I'll be presenting the data from 2023 and 2024, and we are currently collecting data for 2020, 2025. So what were we interested in? What did we want to achieve? We really were interested in, how was generative AI being used? Okay, so we wanted to go to these strategy, organizations and professions and ask them, how was it being used? How could it be used in the future? And some of the benefits and barriers. All right, so that were the kind of key things that we were interested in. We modelled the survey against the IASP body of knowledge. So for those that might be familiar with the IASP body of knowledge, we used that, okay, in terms of the questions, the questionnaire, okay. And what we got in 2023, there were 107 responses from 28 countries. I'm not sure if there were any from Kazakhstan, but there were 17 industry sectors. Okay, and then we went out again, and it's very hard to get people responding to surveys. In 2024, we only got the 70 responses from 19 countries, and predominantly from consulting and government, financial services, education and training. And the primary roles, as you see there, consultant, practitioner, managers, planners, and executive C-suite. They were the predominant roles. We asked the question, what areas have you been using generative AI in 2023, and over 50% in the first year. And I suppose in hindsight, it was to be expected that many people really didn't know what it was. They weren't using it. They weren't using it in business, and a spike in the strategy formulation. So that when we start and we do that environmental scan, we do the formulation of the strategy. And then in 2024, what we saw was a spike, a further increase in the formulation. So by far, when you're putting the strategy together, when you're doing your environmental analysis, when you're, doing that data collection and consideration of options and the SWOT analysis, the PESTEL analysis, all of those things, then lesser so in transformation execution. Okay, so as we see now agentic AI and agents being developed, we would expect to see this execution start to increase, and certainly help in engagement and governance. Still, areas people were not using it at all, even though it was less, it was still over 30%. So still quite a lot of people in 2024 not using AI in any of these areas. And in 2024, reporting back that there was greater use of administration, like an example of that might be to take the notes, the minutes from a meeting, in terms of creating a report or taking actions from a meeting using Microsoft Teams research, project management, and analysis. The tools and the framework, these tools that you see on the page, they come from the IASP body of knowledge. And these are all the tools, and there are a lot more tools than these ones, but these were the ones that were selected in that pilot survey with respect to the ones that are most commonly used in the strategy profession. And the top 3 in 2023 were, picked out as scenario planning, futures research, signal and trend scanning, and SWOT analysis. And then in 2024, we saw scenario planning, communications planning, and SWOT analysis. But not, they're all kind of used, fairly well. There's not a huge, scenario planning, even though it sits at, 65% there, you'll see many of these others are at 50% or 40%. So there was quite a lot of usage there. In terms of the greatest concern, we said, what areas are you worried about? What is your greatest concern? And in 2023, certainly misinformation, getting the wrong information was number one. The misuse of the data, lacking of context, ethical implication, and bias were the top 5. In 2024, certainly ethical implications were certainly up there. And you'll see there was a lesser concern, of misinformation. So, and the reason for that is the quality of the data had improved and has improved, and we're trusting more. Like the information's more grounded. The data that's in the learning databases is being cleaned. There's enormous amount of investment that's made, and also the grounding of the data. So it certainly improved that, but certainly job losses continues, and it was sitting at number 5. And you often see job losses in the news or in the media, a concern about people losing their jobs. Okay. In terms of the 5 greatest benefits, so why what are we interested in? Again, you'll see they're not red. It's not like the others are 0, but we're seeing organizational learning. And we certainly see that, and I certainly see that when I'm teaching students, that it's a fantastic tool to learn things, lots of different things. So organizational learning, business model alignment, in 2024, enhanced compliance. So compliance, that means things like governance and risk, enhancing that, reducing costs, enhancing competitive advantage in 2024. So that they were some of the benefits. And then some of the challenges, you see there in 2023 and 2024 and 2024 around compliance, sustainability, overuse, and personal relationship damage was quite an interesting one, where people kind of concerned about personal brand and personal relationship damage. Confidentiality, so certainly the way in which the robots collect data, sometimes it's collecting all sorts of data, and some of that might be copyrighted data, confidential data, and this is one of the risks that we really need to be concerned about. There was a question then asked about what are the barriers to evaluating whether to incorporate AI into your strategic planning and management. Lack of skills was certainly, featured both in 2023 and 2024. as the highest, then followed by ethical considerations. Interesting that, you know, people were still feeling that it was too costly, and the resistance to change. Okay, so there were a lot of open text, what we call open text. That's when you have a question in the survey that says, you know, what other comments do you have? So these are the kind of comments, and some of the comments that were coming back around the importance of data quality and relevance, ethical considerations, the impact on the businesses and workers with a misunderstanding or misuse, need for AI expertise and training, concerns regarding technological obsolescence were, you know, the what came back in 2023. In 2024, reliability, ethical efficiency gains, competitive advantage, and implementation of best practices featured there. So amongst the ethical concerns, and just to explain this a little bit more, and there's a link there, you know, this truthfulness, the truthfulness and accuracy of the information, and even though that is improving and continues to be improved, copyright, there's still quite a number of organizations that are, you know, pursuing legal action against OpenAI and ChatGPT for the use of copyrighted materials in the learning database, risk of unemployment, biases, and misuse in this thing called deepfake. So deepfakes is a thing that where we can create a video or a voice of someone, and it's not them. It's created. Like we back in the old days, we would just cut and paste in Microsoft Paint somebody's face, and we'd put it on a photo, and it wouldn't look quite right, but we would have a laugh. But nowadays we can put these people into videos, and we can use their voices, and this is the concern around the unethical uses of AI. Certainly, the information and AI, you know, it's been moving very, very fast, and the European Union Artificial Intelligence Act is something important to have a look at if you're interested in this stuff, and in terms of some of the guidance and some of the governance and risk and compliance aspects. In Australia, there's been an enormous amount of work that's been done in terms of providing standards, voluntary safety standards, providing resources. You know, we now in Australia, we have got a government, an AI adoption tracker. It's called the use of AI in Australia. Overseas, the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, the MIT Risk Repository is also a really good resource which has compiled the AI risks into a register. And then we are seeing, you know, all sorts of tools, you know, AI going into tools, whether they're products like business model Canva. Some of you might be familiar if you're from project management, Jira, the Jira products, Figma. These are just some examples. Confluence, Slack. You know, the way that AI is making its way into these products. So when we, you know, talking now just about this what we call the race, the AI race, and we see it, you know, that there's a link that tracks and talks about the race between all of these different companies. Certainly in Australia, Microsoft is leading the race, and some would say, you know, are they the best product? Maybe not, but they're leading the race because they're leading the trust race. So they're the trusted partner for many government organisations in Australia. They're trusted as far as you know, their integration to Microsoft Office and email, and knowing that their data is protected in terms of creating instances where their data doesn't go into a learning database that is accessible in other parts of the world. Couple of other sites that I've included here also: Life Architect, which tracks the artificial general intelligence and artificial super intelligence. When we talk about artificial general intelligence, we're talking about a machine that performs at the level of an average median human. And whereas artificial superintelligence is a machine that performs at the level of an expert human in practically any field. Okay, so when we talk about a median human, here is the profile of a median human, a 30-year-old woman from India, works as a product manager, speaks 2 languages, will read 700 books in her lifetime, can recall roughly 7 items from memory, and has got an IQ of around 100. Okay, so it's quite interesting to have a read and look at the way in which you know, these tracking of AGI and ASI in terms of how good these machines are getting. In project management, something close to my heart, certainly the PMI is putting an enormous amount of effort and resources and investment into AI. And certainly there's a tool called Infinity, and you know, the Infinity, that the PMI have created a number of you know, what are they called? These courses that you can do to learn about AI. Okay. In terms of use cases, when we see the way that businesses are using AI, we're seeing it in customer experience, you know, as far as helping content creation, employee productivity, healthcare, education, marketing and sales. So these are some of the professional use cases, and there's certainly you know, many things that are being, you know, that are used to help businesses. Okay. And also Google at their conference last year, this is a link that will download their, you know, from their conference. They had a conference in 2024. It's a 64-page conference, and it covers 321 real world use cases from retail to automotive to healthcare. Okay, so that is a really good resource. Certainly we're seeing generative AI and ChatGPT is, you know, there's a lot of talk about that, but also what's happening at the same time is the advancements in robots. Okay, so you know, you've got, you know, these robots that are just getting, you know, better and better and better, you know, and they might be from China, United States, Thailand. These are, you know, in Singapore, for instance, they're using robots to patrol the streets as a police patrol robot. So the combination of both generative AI and these robots is really how it's kind of coming together, and you know, really quite scary in some ways. All right, so we would like to do now an activity, because I've done a lot of talking, and I thought we would also do an activity because students love activities. So there's a code there, and I'm just gonna, if you just scan that code and hit this off, just see if this will work for us. 572. Ilana, is that coming up on your screen? Just check, because sometimes.
Yeah, so those who were able to open up the QR code or link, please let us know in the chat area. Please put the plus. Okay, so we have the request to share the link in the chat. Do you think, Nick, this is possible?
All right, let me try that. If you go to, or you can, if you go to www.menti.com, that number there, I'll see if I can get the link. Because now that it's actually started, I don't know if I can.
Yeah, and let me also copy the link from the slide. Those who were able to scan the code are actually putting the plus, so it's working.
Okay, so I'll just give it another minute, because once I go to the next slide, you'll lose this information.
Yeah, I'm just putting everything to the chat. The code. Yeah, just copied the code.
Okay, let's try this. Now we've got a question. You should see this on your phone or your computers, or you see that. So the benefits of generative AI for strategy, so that you should be able to select this. Let's see if this is going to work. It's always a disaster when you try to use technology.
Well, the chat says, or the participants say that they are able to open up.
So they should be able to answer this one now. So they should start to move. Okay, so we've got someone good. All right, this is working now. So in Kazakhstan, is ChatGPT one of the more popular ones, or Microsoft? Is Microsoft Copilot a big tool in Kazakhstan?
Well, yeah, this is a good question. Overall, ChatGPT is very popular, but for companies that are using Microsoft ecosystem, then Copilot probably is preferred.
Yeah,
However, I think almost everyone is trying, like personally, maybe to play with ChatGPT these days.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so Copilot, Copilot has got a big trust factor, in Australia. They just companies, education, they've done some pretty big projects, and they're what we call the trusted partner, even though they're not the best. Copilot is ChatGPT, and certainly Gemini, the new Gemini is being very competitive. And then some of the Chinese products like DeepSeek. But in Australia, we don't like those products that are housing where the data is going to China, so that many of the governments say not to use that, and universities don't allow the students to use DeepSeek. Okay, so I think we've got a few respondents there. So what we're seeing, and again, you may not be using it there, but increasing efficiency. So how do we save time? How do we improve companies' decision making, helping us with data and decision making, cost reduction? All right, that's good. So we'll go to, I've got a few extra slides too, some really good research tools. So what are some of the challenges in organizational AI implementation? So what are you seeing? What do you think, we want to roll it out? So if you're working in a company and say, well, we want to roll out ChatGPT in the company, or we want to roll out that for the whole company, what do you think are some of the challenges that you've seen? And it might not be in a company that you're working at the moment. Maybe it's stuff that you've been reading. Maybe it's we'll open up for questions soon. I'm interested to see what people are thinking here, and then we can have a look at some questions. Digital awareness. So yeah, that's a really good point, because really it does require a fairly high level of digital awareness to be able to use the products and integrate to other things. And certainly digital awareness goes hand in hand with the data that's collected. So we don't see any data from the poorer developing companies that don't have infrastructure, digital assets. Digital security issues, yep. So lack of methodology, lack of skills, fear no time to learn, not being tech aware. Yep. So it's bad enough learning the new version of Microsoft Outlook, let alone other things. So it's a problem. Any others? Anybody else have any other thoughts? Yeah, I think so. I think there are a lot of good uses for entertainment. Most AI tools are stupid themselves. It's about the quality of the data. I think that what you get back is as a result of the data that's been put in. And many companies now are just setting up their private instances of their company data. So it's helping with reports. We're seeing that the IT infrastructure. So if you've got IT infrastructure, because it's coming back. Okay, that's good. All right. So what are the risks if we rely on generative AI now for strategy? All right. So we're going to use it for strategy. We're going to use it for formulation. Let's just say we've got the new agent and we're using it for strategy execution. Imagine it's going to do the projects all by itself. What are some of the risks that you think? So these are some of the risks of relying on this too much or just relying on it. Data accuracy. Yep. So companies have got all sorts of data, and if you've ever had to port a website, if a company's had a new website project and you had to move data, you find out how bad the data is blindly without knowing the source. And credibility, we don't trust. And so it's important when we use ChatGPT or any of the different ones, how do we check the credibility of that information? A lot of mistakes all the time. Sometimes it seems it makes mistakes on purpose just so that the users look stupid. Okay. Overpromise, underperformance. Yeah. Relying too much without double, triple fact checking. So it's important. Yeah, it's important, and we must double and triple check, replacing processes of research and thinking on asking GPT. One of the big criticisms is that it's stopping us thinking. It's stopping us using our brain. When people get too attached and using ChatGPT, in 5 years' time, they will have forgotten how to think, or maybe never learned how to think. Just like the younger generation don't know how to give you change for $15.50 out of a 20, or this mathematics that's missing that we used to learn, how to do some of this maths. Younger generations trust it with no fact checking, and it's just a sign of the difference in how the younger generation use it, how they even think is very different. So it's that's interesting, and we need to be mindful. We need to be mindful of that. Okay, that's good. Just sort of wanted to get some feedback. And this one is just the last one of this, just the greatest concerns. Obviously, we touched on a few of them already, the data quality, loss of jobs, whether decisions are being made, if there's any concerns. We probably have got the concerns already covered. All right, let me do that. Let me just quickly go back now to here. All right. Okay. So certainly in strategy formulation, this is something that we've been working with some organisations and companies around, looking at an AI strategy and how that would, play out in terms of looking at engagement of stakeholders, establishing governance, ethics. There's quite a lot to each one of these steps, and so it's not a small project to look at AI and an AI strategy. That this trust framework that come from Rajesh Kumar, I thought was quite important and worthy of inclusion here in terms of looking at some of the areas of trust and we say we don't trust ChatGPT. Why? Because dependability, stability, accountability, human in the loop. So you see a lot of, papers and research about humans in the loop. Explainability. So that means how did it actually make the decision that it made? So some of that explainability. So this was quite good. So just the final slide. I've got another, half a dozen slides just for information, but certainly for companies, organizations to use generative AI, it's very much, the ones that are early adopters are using it for competitive advantage. We're seeing a number of different jobs, new jobs that are being created, and so certainly there's this what we call augmentation. That means separating jobs out. The rate of change. So what we have seen in the last 3 months has been the same as what we saw in the last 18 months. Okay, so it's important to note that it's just, now we're measuring by the hour rather than by the day or by the week. What changes, what's new. Like you wake up in the morning, or all of a sudden something else has been released, a new product, a new problem has been solved, and areas of improved reasoning, improve the quality of the data, the groundness, explainable AI. That means how do they make decisions, okay? And customized applications and agentic AI. By all means, once you get this pack, have a look at some of the resources. If you're going to play with these things, I would recommend you set up a separate Gmail, because sometimes it asks you for your email so that you can register. If you've got a separate one, it means that all the junk email will go into that one rather than filling up your email. So I think it's important to note that it's safe as far as phishing goes, and safe from scams, but not from spam. All right, and just to note there, do not upload any personal information or corporate data, because this is where it's important that it doesn't go into the learning database. And certainly reach out if you're interested in some of this, interested in getting involved. Certainly, I've just added the IASP information. Just a reminder, we welcome people interested in it. Strategy Association is a very close net of enthusiasts, and certainly it's great to see the Kazakhstan chapter growing, and it is about learning and networking, and certainly there's a lot of things that IASP have got to offer. This survey here is still open, so now we are collecting information, and we're collecting data for 2025 for this year. So certainly welcome you all to participate, and we're also conducting interviews. We're also now doing interviews. So if there's anyone that's interested in, if you're working with strategy or working with generative AI tools to help with strategy formulation in a company, we would welcome you to join as part of our qualitative survey collection. So I'll just put it out there. And now we've got a little bit of time for some questions. And like I say, there's another 20 slides or so. There's a whole lot of support slides that you get. So if you're interested in research and AI, there's some good YouTube channels. I've included some YouTube channels. I've included some other use case strategies and some of the links to some of the activities in China and the US. Okay, so I'll get that onto Yolanda, and she'll distribute that. But certainly happy to take some questions now of people that are joined tonight, and of some of the other
Thank
questions.
you.
Yeah.
So thank you, Nick. This was such a profound and detailed information that our community needed. For those who are listening to us, we will be sharing the presentation that Nick will be sharing with us. And now this is indeed the good time for questions. And we do have one hand raised by our colleague. Her name is Karli Gash. So Karli Gash, please, the question.
Hi, Nick. Thank you for the presentation. It's actually, for me, it's a first touch when I hear about strategy and AI. So we used it to write strategy, but not for like day-to-day activity, strategic management, etc. And I have a question. Do you have a good case in your professional life when you used AI for strategy management? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think in that formulation, like I've used it, in helping companies do their SWOT analysis and pestle analysis. So when we do before we start a new strategy cycle, we would do an environmental scan, what we call environmental scan. So that what that means is we'll want to have a look at what's happening outside the company in terms of its competitors, in terms of things that will impact the company, and we want to do a scan inside the company. So I have used the tools to ask for a SWOT, what we call SWOT analysis and pestle analysis for a company, and then use it for helping communication planning and stakeholder management and engagement planning. Have not used it yet for strategy execution, and certainly at the moment with generative AI agents and agentic AI, like if you wanted to have a holiday, if you were interested in coming to have a holiday in Australia, you could go to one of these agents and just give them your credit card number, and it will go and book your flights, it'll book your accommodation, it'll, I personally, I'm not comfortable yet to give my credit card details to ChatGPT, but if you are, it can do strategy execution. But I think there'll be a little bit of time before we get that confidence to do that. But it's certainly the tools that help us do analysis quickly. I'll give you another example where I have used it. I've interviewed 20 executives. So I've taken interviews, and then I've taken those interviews and I've put it into Perplexity like ChatGPT, and asked it to give me a summary of the 20 interviews and tell me what were the consistent themes, what were the themes, and what were the main things that people were concerned about, as an example. And it did that very quickly. And so coming up with the, putting together the presentation to go back, to that. And so I had put that into like a ChatGPT, but nowadays, like if you were to use like this Menti that we just used just now, it automatically hooks into AI and it can give you the themes. It gives you the themes of what people, with those open text responses, it'll group them into themes, just as an example. So I think the uses are growing, and slowly confidence from people is growing to use it, if that makes sense. But it's the confidence in terms of giving your credit card detail probably not there yet. Like, yeah. Has that answered your question? Is that what you meant?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, dear colleagues on the call, do you have any other questions? You can turn on your mic and ask them directly to Nick, or put them into the chat because I'm monitoring that. And I see some participants are typing the questions to the chat.
No problem at all.
So yeah. Okay, so I hope you can monitor the chat, Nick, because
Yeah, I can see.
there are some very interesting comments over there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and before we actually leave the meeting, I do have a couple of questions that were asked during the registration. We actually have covered them mostly indirectly. However, like for example, there is a question to you as a lecturer, as the person with PhD teaching. So what are the current PhD research topics in Australian universities when it comes to the field of AI? There was a question from a Kazakhstani community member.
Yeah. Look, I know I have a couple of friends that are doing PhD in AI, and I mean, one of the challenges is, we have 3 years to finish a PhD. The problem is by the time you finish, it's potentially outdated already. That's a problem in any PhD, but it's a bigger problem when we're doing it in generative AI. But certainly, there are many areas that people are doing research and PhD topics in machine learning and deep learning. So, those algorithms that are used, I've been involved with some papers and publications around explainable AI, and the way that that's done is through mathematical models and advanced models. Certainly the robots, what we talk about, the robots, the robotics, the computer vision, the multimedia, there's lots of work that's been done in those spaces, as well as in the large language models. Australia probably is nowhere near as advanced as other parts of the world, like America and China. So it's not seeing, that you won't. I don't think you'll see the next ChatGPT company, like the next OpenAI company, because we don't have the same level of resources. We don't have the data centers. Most of the universities are very poor when it comes to those GPUs that are needed for the learning databases, as an example. But certainly other work around responsible AI in healthcare, science, they're just some examples. And there are people that are doing PhDs in the impact of AI on education and the way that it's changing, and the need for authentic assessments and changing the way we assess the students, as an example. So they're probably just some of the examples, and certainly depending on what industry sector that you're in, it's the hardest thing with doing a PhD in AI is, like any PhD, is to find a supervisor that can help.
Well, thank you for being sincere on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, Nick, we do have a couple of other questions. However, our time for tonight is already off, and
Yep.
we do know that it's already late for you. So thank you for finding this time to speak to our community about generative AI for strategy management. I personally have seen quite an interesting information about the research results. Very interesting. And thank you for this big work, because I do understand how many efforts you spent on that together with your colleagues and the team of the research. So, dear colleagues, if your questions are still not answered or have not been answered directly and you would like them to be answered, please contact Nick directly, because after this event, we will be sharing Nick's presentation, where on the last slide, you could see his LinkedIn contact. So if you still have some questions, I think, Nick, you will be pretty happy to answer them, maybe in LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And certainly, people that would like to get involved, in a research, certainly, happy, be very happy if you pass it on to anybody that you know to do the survey, because it's always hard to get people to do the survey. And without that longitudinal data, like we will need, we only got 70 people in the second round. We need to kind of get at least 70 again in the third round. Otherwise, from a statistical point of view, we will get shot down when we try to do academic publication. So it's important.
Oh, indeed. So wishing you all the success with the survey, with the research, and thank you for opening up this opportunity for our Central Asian community. We will be contacting you with the link information, and maybe we'll be sending you using our membership base for IASP Kazakhstan. We'll be happy to support. So, Nick, thank you very much for being with us, for speaking for us, and everyone who joined. Thank you very much as well. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the moderation.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.